I started going to the food bank a little over a year ago, and it wasn't until earlier this year that I finally felt like I had it figured out. Learning to use food bank groceries effectively comes with a lot of growing pains, and I don't want you to have to go through that unnecessarily, especially if I can help fast track the process. My name is Kirsten, and I spend my days processing grief and healing while staying kind, cozy, and courageous. And today I'm going to walk you through how I stretch my food bank haul into 1 week of meals. Before we get into the cooking, for those of you that are unfamiliar, I want to break down what exactly a food bank is. Food banks are organizations that provide groceries for free for communities that can't afford to buy them. We started using a food bank after I got pregnant. I wasn't working at the time, so I was living off of my savings, and I wanted to make sure we were keeping enough money aside for the baby, so we decided to use majority of the money we spend on groceries every month for the baby and apply to the food banks in our neighborhood. We currently rely on the food bank for 75% of our groceries and buy the rest during a monthly shop at bulk food stores and immigrant grocery stores because they tend to be cheaper. If I'm being honest, navigating food banks does require a lot of mental and emotional labor. You don't always know what you're going to get, so you have to get creative when figuring out what to cook with the ingredients available to you. At our food bank, we usually get dairy, 1 carton of milk, and 1 carton of egg on an average day. But there was this 1 week where we got 3 cartons of milk and 2 cartons of eggs. Definitely living large. Pantry goods, pastas, rices, lentils, and beans. Vegetables and fruit, which are often bruised, so they need to be finished as soon as possible. But I found that the produce is always seasonal, which I love. Ready-to-eat food that's frozen or in a can, which actually really comes in handy as a mom because I just have to add protein, veggies, and flavor, and then it becomes a whole meal. Snacks like yogurt, granola bites, and sometimes even coffee pods. And this new food bank we switched to recently also gives us baby items. This 1 week we got a toy, a winter hat that we'd specifically been looking for, and a tummy time pillow. This is what our fridge looks like after our food bank haul. It's enough food to last us the week. And I actually love that our fridge doesn't look too full because I can see everything that's in it, so we never end up wasting any food unless the produce was already unusable to begin with. When using the food bank, you're saving money, but you're spending time. Figuring out what to cook with the ingredients you get requires time to plan meals based on what expires when, to research ingredients you're not familiar with, and to brainstorm what ingredients could pair well together. Not every food bank has great supply, and even the best food banks have low supply some weeks. So you can come back disappointed that you didn't get the groceries you were hoping for, and also feel anxious about how you're going to figure out your week's meals with limited ingredients. And not every food bank has great staff. At our last food bank, the staff would make community members feel like they had to prove that they deserve the food, when in reality, everybody deserves access to food, and nobody should be shamed for being resourceful and using their food bank when they need it. I wish I could do more to support the emotional labor that people are expected to overcome when using food banks, but right now, I don't know how I can. So instead, I'll support you with the mental labor required to cook with groceries from the food bank. I'm hoping that the tools and frameworks I use in this video make your food bank journey that much easier. Before deciding what to cook, it's important for me to decide how to cook my meals for the week. I like to make meals that allow me to prep as I go to save time. The meals I cook range from 15 minutes to an hour. I don't stress about having the perfect ingredients. If I don't have an ingredient, I ask myself how that ingredient contributes to my dish and how I can find a substitute that will fulfill that role. And I prioritize well-rounded dishes using Samin Nosrat's guide that every great dish has salt, fat, acid, and heat. Okay, let's get to cooking. I usually make 2 breakfasts and 4 lunches or dinners per week. For my breakfast, I like to have 1 sweet and 1 savory option. For our sweet breakfast, we're going to be making apple cinnamon overnight oats. Since we got some instant apple cinnamon oatmeal packets this week, I like to start by roasting some nuts on a pan over medium heat. I had some leftover almonds from the bulk food store, so I used those. I also peeled and chopped an apple and simmered that with a splash of water and cinnamon to deepen the flavor from the oatmeal packets. The nuts and apples take an extra 10 minutes, and that also means extra dishes, but they add such complex flavors to the overnight oats, so I never skip this step. While the nuts and fruits are cooking, I mix my overnight oats base. I add the oatmeal packets and then some chia and flax seeds from the bulk food store, some yogurt and milk, and extra oats because the instant packets tend to be too sweet. I mix this up and then add more milk if necessary. Once the nuts are done, I chop them up and add to the overnight oats mixture, and then add the apples as well. I usually add vanilla essence, but I didn't have any, so I used the last few drops of this cherry brandy. I stored the mixture overnight in the fridge, and the next morning added a little milk to my bowl because I prefer a thinner consistency. Love me some flavorful overnight oats. Next up, for the savory breakfast, we're going to make a rice bowl. First up, I roasted some sweet potatoes and beetroot in the oven. I didn't season them or anything because I find the flavors deepen in the oven. The peels tear off real easy after they're roasted, and then I just chop them up. While the sweet potatoes and beetroot were roasting, I cooked some rice. I added cardamom pods and peppercorns to the rice while it was simmering for a little extra flavor. I had some leftover bean mash from tacos last week, so I added that to the rice for some protein. The Mexican spices I used for the beans worked really well with the spiced rice, and the sweet potatoes and beetroot balanced the meal perfectly with sweetness. And on the mornings, when I wanted extra creaminess for the rice bowl, I added this cilantro yogurt sauce I made to top off chili I had for one of my dinners that week. Rice bowls are such a versatile breakfast, which makes them perfect for food bank groceries because you can adapt them based on the ingredients you get. For our first lunch/dinner of the week, we're going to make shepherd's pie. This is a great dish to use up potatoes, which you often get from the food bank, and you can cater the base to whatever meats, veggies, and flavors you have. I'm sure this isn't the authentic way to make a shepherd's pie. I've never actually looked at a recipe. I just remember trying it once, so I'm making it based off of that memory. I first boiled potatoes, and while that was going, I roughly chopped onions, carrots, and garlic into large chunks and added them to a food processor. This shepherd's pie seemed to have a lot of steps, so I didn't want to waste time chopping. I then browned some mince I was saving up in my freezer. I like to brown my mince in large chunks so I get a better brown before breaking the mince up and adding spices. While the mince was browning, the potatoes were done, so I heated up some milk, butter, and dried sage and whisked that into the potatoes. The mince was done once the potatoes were whisked, so I seasoned the mince with Worcestershire, salt, pepper, and sage, and then added the mince to a casserole dish. I then transferred the blended veggies to the same pan and seasoned with the same Worcestershire, salt, pepper, and sage to match the mince. I didn't have enough mince for the shepherd's pie, so I'm going to be mixing in the veggies with the mince as the base. While the veggies were reducing, I chopped some zucchini I had from the previous week and added that in as well. Zucchini cooks really fast, so I just stirred it for a couple minutes and then mixed the veggies with the mince. I felt like the base needed some tang, so I added ketchup and then flattened it, topped the mince with the mashed potatoes, and added some cubes of butter. One thing about me, as long as we have money remaining at the end of the month, I will have a block of butter. I baked the shepherd's pie, and wow, how beautiful is that color? The butter did not disappoint. The shepherd's pie did not hold its shape, but it tasted delicious. Next up, we're making chicken soup from the can. I love adding lemon to my chicken soup, but I didn't have any lemon, so I decided to use tamarind instead. You just add boiling water to tamarind blocks and they start to break down into a paste. For my flavor base, I didn't have any more onions because I used them up for the shepherd's pie. So I cut up cabbage and caramelized that instead. Once the cabbage started to brown, I added turmeric, cumin, and pepper because I figured these spices would pair well with the tamarind. I roasted the spices and then added roughly chopped carrots. Once the carrots were browned, I added a little stock from 1 can of chicken soup and then covered and simmered that for 5 minutes. Once the carrots were fork tender, I added in 2 cans of chicken soup. One was with rice and the other one was with noodles, so we had a lot of different textures going on in this soup. I simmered everything for 5 minutes and then added the tamarind at the end. I tasted and it didn't need any salt because of how salty the canned chicken soup was. I gotta say, this cabbage chicken soup was unreal. Our third lunch/dinner is beetroot pasta. When roasting beetroot for my breakfast bowl, I roasted a few extra that I had left over from the last week and saved them in the fridge. I like to steam roast, which is basically covering damp beetroot in foil so that the peel slips right off. I chopped the beets and added them to a blender along with olive oil, salt, and garlic, and then mixed this into cooked pasta and topped it off with prosciutto and goat cheese. Yes, that's right, you heard me. Our monthly shop happened to fall the week after Valentine's Day, and the prosciutto and goat cheese was 95% off, so you best believe I picked them up. Yes, this pasta tasted as good as it looks. Our final lunch/dinner is chili, but not just any chili, chili with no tomatoes. I caramelized cabbage as the base again and didn't have any tomato paste, so just used this veggie bouillon paste that had tomatoes in it. And I added cumin, oregano, chili, paprika, and pepper. I toasted the spices and then deglazed the pot with some leftover red wine. Once the mixture looked jammy, I added in veggies. I only had squash left over, but I figured this would add a sweetness to balance out the spice. I then added 2 cans of beans I had gotten from the food bank weeks ago and some bay leaves. I didn't have masa harina, so I just used cornmeal, and I also added cocoa. I topped this off with water and covered until simmering, and then opened the lid slightly and cooked like that for 1 to 1.5 hours, stirring every 10 to 15 minutes until it had the right consistency. I topped this chili off with cilantro yogurt sauce. To get herbs to last longer, I usually blend them into a sauce to top off my meals. This cilantro yogurt sauce is just cilantro, yogurt, garlic, and juice from a jar of pickled jalapenos because I didn't have any lemon. I can't believe I liked this chili as much as I did, especially because I always thought tomatoes were essential in chili, but hey, it was bomb. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope my week of meals gave you some insight into how to navigate your own food bank groceries. If you're interested in more creative ways to cook or budget, you should check these videos out as well. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!